All right, all right, all right. Happy Friday. Oh my gosh. Happy Friday. It's the SDR Hotline. I'm Gabrielle. You already knew that. Doesn't matter who I am because I have a very special guest today. Jacob, Grebrewold. What's up? How are you doing?
It's all good, sis. I honestly, you're like, yeah, it doesn't matter who I am. I'm like, yeah, right. Please.
Listen, honestly, in front of you, because I'm like, I know who I am. Okay, like this is about you, honestly, and learning more about you and hearing more about your story. So I'm so excited for you to be here.
I'm pumped to be here, sis. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, definitely. So how about this? Just to start off, right? So like I know I've gotten a chance to get to know you over the past few months, but what do you think people should know about you just to start off?
Yeah, great question. I mean, probably the big things I would start with, if you know 4 things about me, you know me pretty well. The first is that I'm the kid of 2 Ethiopian refugees, meaning grind mode till I die. Like my parents, the worst that I could ever hope to pull off as far as grind mode. So yeah, 1, kid of 2 Ethiopian refugees. 2 is that I was raised a debater. So I had the chance to get scouted young to go travel and compete internationally. I've had the chance to spar intellectually, verbally with some of my good friends at some of the finer institutions out there. So debater shapes a lot of the way that I think and communicate and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not mad at you if I'm like pressing in on a point. So debater, I would say 3, spoken word poet. Grew up like very much in love with words. So that probably plays off when I use like maybe like $10 words when a $2 word couldn't have done it or whatever. But I just love language and all that. So, and creative type. So spoken word poet. And then lastly, I want to be a pastor one day. So I love shepherding people. I love people. So I think if you put all those 4 things together, kid of Ethiopian refugees, debater, spoken word poet, hopeful pastor one day, that probably is a decent sum up on me.
I love it. I love it. Okay, wonderful. Here, I got a next question for you then. So knowing those 4 things about you, why sales? Like why choose sales to get into?
Yeah, I love, personally, I don't start by saying like, if you want to get to know me, you got to know that I'm in sales. Cause I feel like a lot of times people don't even know what that means. You know what that means?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like they think sales, they think, used car sales and slick bag. And like, by the way, I know some great people who sell cars. So I think that's a mischaracterization a lot of the time, but like they are, whether it's media or whatever, like bad experiences with certain salespeople. If I just say I'm in sales, people don't have a box for that. And then there's a lot of mischaracterization that flows from it. But if you really like unpack the things that I said a second ago, right? Like grinder, I love building cases and communicating cases and that sort of thing. I love creativity and beauty and language. And I love shepherding people. I love helping people. Like if you put those things together, like obviously that's why I'm in sales. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I don't, if I just say the title without framing or like helping people understand what that means, I feel like I'm doing a disservice. So
yeah, I know. I think that's beautiful because I mean, if I even think about my journey into sales when I first started, like sales was an absolute last resort. I remember like applying to my sales development role, the first one that I did, and I was like, what has my life become? Who am I? What am I becoming? But since then, have had a chance to, how to put this, allow my like kind of preconceptions about sales to be totally dismantled and to really like show up as I wish to show up. And even like having a show like this where we can kind of talk about people's stories, it's something totally different than when I initially thought sales was.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think, so a second ago, I said that a lot of people don't understand what sales is. Obviously, typically I'm talking like externally, like in sales hacker, having like an in-house conversation, like it's the family. But I think even within the family, a lot of times, like we have, and I don't know what it is. I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to know some really great salespeople, like not just like exceptional in their craft, but great in who they are as a person.
Yes.
And then seeing that and having my taste buds awoken to that, that's so much of the reason why I love like doing this game. You know what I mean? Like this is fun for me. But I also think that there's some room for me to like pivot out to other people who haven't had the chance to know some of those great folk that I've had the chance to know. Be like, man, these are the things that they share with me that make me fired up to be here. And that's really exciting. And I think for other people also that maybe that resonates in ways that some of the typical sales chit chat maybe doesn't. So, but we're obviously saying mind here, so we like
so I mean we hadn't really talked about this when we were doing like the prep. We only met for like 10 minutes because we're like, we know each other, we'll be fine, we'll see what happens. And I saw the post that you made on LinkedIn yesterday, and so I literally just like I asked Sam to pull from your post to start to influence some of the questions that we would ask. But one of the things that I have been super that I've admired so much about you is your ability to like connect with people. And especially like, you're like, oh, you like name drop people out of nowhere. And you're like, oh yeah, I talked to so-and-so and I did this and that. And I'm like, the gumption, I love it. So the question that I'm going to ask here is like, how do you build a tribe essentially of people to mentor, push, and inspire you, especially as you're like just starting in your career?
Yeah, so I'll preface this with the thing I've said a million times with you in our prep conversations and all our conversations, Gab, is like, I'm not going to claim to know things I don't know. Like I'm not, the top performing person in the world as far as an AE goes. Like I'm just a guy. Like you're having a conversation with a friend, but with that asterisk on the conversation, I'll have to lob up. But I think I've been really blessed with some great friends who have been willing to help me out. And I think the first step in the midst of that is like a quick story. So I grew up an extremely picked on kid. Like I grew up a kid that people would like zip tie up and take turns kicking the crap out of, like shooting with BB guns, feeding sandwiches full of pubic hair, like the most picked on kid you knew. Yeah. And when I got to high school, I went to a high school like 2 cities away from where I grew up. I swear this answers the question.
Okay.
When I got to the high school, I was like, okay, I don't want to be this kid anymore, but I don't know how to not be this kid anymore. So I, like, nothing to lose, kind of went up to the kids in grade 12, sat at their lunch table. And I'm like, hey, like, you got it. I don't. I'm desperate. Please help. Like that was my pitch. Like I had nothing really to give other than like, I'm hungry. I want to get to where I hope to be, but I don't know necessarily the steps. Like you've done that. I'll acknowledge my need for help. Right. Like, and at first it was, can I pick your brain conversations? That was before it was like the thing that everyone would say. And eventually it's like, oh no, I need to like come to the table with some like specific questions that I've got to ask this person of what I'd hope to learn. And I don't really take I take very few conversations as like a moment to, I don't know how to put it, like 99.99% of the time, I need to be learning something from the person I'm sitting across from. So I try to ask a lot of questions. I think if that's like someone's general disposition, they're probably going to learn a lot from people. They're probably going to make some good friends. They're probably going to continue to want to make other friends. And that's how you build a tribe. I think curiosity and earnest desire to learn over time with a lot of people that you see around.
Yeah, definitely. I want to kind of drill down into this because I think there's like the one part of like asking the question, but it sounds like even that story of when you were, and also like I already told this to you, but I'm like so sorry that you experienced that. That's
honestly like water.
I know. But like, I know it's water under the bridge. I just want to like give you a hug. Well, eventually in Ethiopia, we'll do it. When we take our trip. But I think there's something interesting of like the person that we are at a certain moment, that recognition that something needs to change, and there's that journey into becoming somebody else or developing into something else even. So, I mean, in thinking about your experience, like what helped you to become aware of, oh, hey, something needs to change, and for something to change, like I need to change?
I'd say like first and foremost, it was like just the reason I shared the high school bit or like when I was a younger kid bit is I learned this at like a time of desperation. Like I really genuinely like wrestled with whether or not like life is worth living at that time. And that for some people might be like, well, okay, melodramatic kid, but like,
no, I mean, it's real.
So at that time, that's when that skill was fostered. Then it just like things ended up going really well. So by the time I graduated high school, like I had a pretty decent lot socially and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, wow. So wait, the recipe from going like from having nothing to having like a decent setup is ask a lot of people for help and listen and whatever. So I think it just had borne fruit in my life. The habit started from a place of desperation, and then it became like, wow, if I can identify like that I don't have it, that someone does have it, and then also between the two is wisdom that they can impart. Like, why wouldn't I want to grow? So I can't really say for another person what's going to spark that awareness. You need to go and build trust. It's like when you realize that you ain't it, like you'll probably like, and wherever you are in your life or career or whatever, when you realize you ain't it, that's probably when you're going to want to go and start listening.
Yeah, I love that. What happened? Sorry, I'm just going to pull up Brian Woodard real quick. Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to use. I don't know if I'm supposed to like show swear words on here. Sorry, sales hacker. Sorry, LinkedIn. But like, what's up? No, honestly, I totally forgot what I was going to say. But I'm trying to even think about my own experience. I was talking to Nikki Ivy last week, right? And I remember, and I told her this before the show. I told her this during the show, but I remember coming across her profile and she was sharing things, and I was like, yeah, like it resonated with me. And there was this moment of like jealousy where I was like, like, like it's almost like why, like what's so special? And I went into this total like victim mindset of. And then when I had a moment just to like check myself and be like, where's this coming from? Like, why am I hating on Nikki? Like, Nikki doesn't know about me. why am I doing this? And there was that moment of recognition of like, rather than just kind of, I guess, I think I had to recognize that I didn't even believe in myself yet. And like, if I'm like, hey, listen, if I really did believe in myself, I would realize that I could do this. But like, if I don't believe in myself, then that's really where that like, oh, I'm not shit kind of thing comes from. So like, rather than accepting that as truth, right, really challenging it and saying, okay, like I believe I can get there. I'm not there right now. But I have the ability to get there. And the only thing that's different between me and somebody else is they're posting on LinkedIn, right? Like they figured out their voice, like they figured out what they need to do. And I'm like, rather than sitting there and worrying about like, hey, is there something wrong with me? I'm like, rather looking at it as, hey, I think I have an opportunity to grow and to learn in this moment. So like, I think that could be a journey of someone just recognizing like, hey, listen, I have the ability to change my situation. And it's just a matter of like, will I allow myself to explore what that change can lead me to?
Yeah. I think there's also like, when I was, again, I could probably, if I read a book one day, and I don't know if I'll read a book one day, but if I ever read a book one day, it'll probably be titled "A Joke with Some Friends." Like everything I learned about business, I learned in high school. Like, cause I feel like we're playing out a lot of these same cycles. Like,
yes. Yes.
But when I was younger, I was like deemed an at-risk youth or whatever. And I got put into this like vulnerability workshop thing called Challenge Day, where they had a bunch of other, young people, like adults, like seniors, like all sorts of people from different walks of life come to this program. And it was like a 1-day vulnerability workshop thing. And it was really formative for me because I saw a bunch of people who like some of them were business people, some of them were social workers, some of them were like just people from different walks of life. Break down about like the stuff and the grime and the muck about themselves and their lives, right? And it was super formative for me because like I saw all these people who would in many ways seem like they had got it together, not have it together collectively. And at that point I'm like, I have to start working off of this thesis that like, and it is a bet I had to make early. It was like, I'm going to hope that most people behind whatever veneer, whatever superficial thing, like there's some ache there that we all got.
Yes.
And if I can step into a vulnerable, sincere place of being comfortable feeling and being broken with other people, if I can be there, then like, I don't really have a whole lot to be worried about in terms of like, what if someone knows too much about me? Like I need to be like, hold my cards close to my chest. It's like, nah, like I don't like if I'm just straight out like that. But also I think the flip of that is I think in realizing that like, no matter where someone is on the spectrum or pedestal or whatever, like we all messed up. Like I got a fundamental belief that people suck. Like we all. Seriously on this. I also think beautiful things about people. I think people are wonderful, but I also fundamentally think we all like ain't it. Like we like, it doesn't matter what kind of resume you got, what sort of like you CEO, you janitor, like we're all messed up for real. We're all messed up. And so if I step in with that understanding, like when I'm coming in asking questions, when I'm coming in being vulnerable, I'm not exposing my weakness to someone who's only ever strength. Like I'm probably just dropping the curtain for them to drop the curtain, and then we can be humans together. And I think at that place, right?
Yes.
There's beautiful learning that passes on. And there's a lot of like, people just realize, oh, this person's real. Like, this person is sincere. And I like the person that I am when I'm around them because I'm sincere too.
Yes.
Like, what other place do you want to build relationships from? Like, what possibly could be more helpful and constructive, not just to like the careers or whatever, but like the of like who you're talking to. And at that point, like building a tribe, building a family, whatever, it's a matter of time. Like you just, I think that vulnerability, that hunger to learn, and that recognition that like everyone's aching for that moment where they could just drop and be real with people. Doesn't matter if they got like that's, I think, a starting premise for me.
Yeah. I was going to be like, I mean, I don't believe that everybody's messed up, but I'm not about to get into a debate with you because you already told me about your background, and that's okay. But 100% agree on, it resonates strongly of like, someone's like, oh, hey, like, what is your superpower, Gab? And I'll say like, attunement, the ability just to like meet people where they're at, wherever they're at. There have been so many, and also, because we said we're going to go deep, but like, if I'm being real, like I feel like there's been so many experiences that I've been exposed to where, and I'd imagine it's similar for you, where it's like, it was not it. Like, it was hard times. It was freaking rough. Like soul stealing experiences, and to have the ability to endure those experiences, to like not let them define who we are. And then also recognize that it's like, okay, like these kind of battle scars and battle wounds are also going to be like the opening points for me to connect even deeper with people. Like, regardless of what anybody is going through, I'm like, I see you, I hear you, I acknowledge you, you're beautiful. Like, sup. So, yeah. Like
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Like, that's it.
Well, I was gonna say, like, there's something in that, and that's one of the reasons that we connect so well. Like, I think the premise of like building a career or building like a brand or building like, you know, a network or whatever. Like there are a lot of ways to go about it, but I don't know if like all of them are super sustainable to like the heart and soul of a person, right? Like for me, like I ain't Jack yet, you know what I mean? Like, and that's whatever. Like, but if
I think you're totally Jack. But
someone was to scroll through my content, and like, I think eventually, like with consistency and whatever, like I'll probably like be able to have some sort of helpful voice or whatnot. It literally will just be like my low light reel. Like that's like, what's your content about? Like, oh, well, I screwed this up, but I learned from so-and-so. Like in a sentence, you know what I mean? Like, this is something I'm struggling with, and this is something that someone said to help me out. Like, I don't need to be like a hero of my timeline. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of social media presence and whatever is like, wow, look at how awesome I am. Like, I know me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that would be like a place where I could feel like I could just be myself, unadulterated, like unfiltered, just like, I feel like I would be trying to keep something up. And for me, I just ain't got the time. I ain't got the spoons. Like, I just can't do it.
I don't.
But I think that with that in mind, like people who have been in the game maybe 2 years, 3 years more than I have, they look at that and go, this kid. But people who have been in the game 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years longer than I have, they see that, they go, yeah, you get it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think there is this experience, or okay, so like I was like, all right, I'm gonna start posting on LinkedIn. I want to try and put myself out there. I'm gonna join all these groups and whatnot. And even when I was like posting, I'm like, okay, I felt like I had to present myself as this expert, right? So on the back end of things, it's like I have all these books and I'm reading and I'm just like trying to like suffocate myself with information basically so that I can spew something out that is hopefully will present me as, oh, she knows a lot. When really I'm like the majority of that time I'm like, shit, excuse me, sorry, sales hacker. Damn, Sam, sorry. I'm like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't.
I'm sorry. Sorry, keep going.
But I'm like, I can't maintain this, right? And so those moments of just, I think sinking into, wow, I'm really trying to present myself as this expert and I still have so much to learn. It's just, there's just so much to learn. And I post about that and people are like, yes, feel it 100%. People are like reaching out over a direct message, let's say, and they're like, thank you so much for sharing this. Like I needed this message today. And I was like, honestly, like this is the message that I needed. So even as we think through how we're building a brand, right? Or, posting on LinkedIn, whatever else, or building a career, it's like, there's so many opportunities to just stop for a moment and think about, hey, like, what do I need in this moment? Like, what is the permission that I need to give myself? And if I'm able to give that to myself, then there's likely somebody else who's going to receive that as well. So like, even in that, right, that vulnerability of just like being true and honest to oneself, you can connect that much stronger and that much deeper with who knows who else.
And that, I think that's I think that can feel like if someone isn't necessarily on that wavelength, I think that hearing that, it's like, oh, well, that sounds like fluffy or noise or whatever. Like, is that really like a practical, helpful way to add value to other people? Or are we just like getting on the box and venting our feelings? And it's like, no, you just like really here's what that premise of content creation gives way to, the sort of content that gives way to, that I think is remarkably helpful, right? Like when you learn from other people, whether from books or conferences or any whatever, like, and you share that from that can be practical, tactical, helpful stuff, right? Without making yourself the protagonist of needing to be the smart one, right? When you're sharing like an industry news because you're just like, I was reading something, because I'm trying to get like better, just like the basic stuff of my gig. And this is something that I learned from this report that you like, I don't know if you find it helpful too. Like that sort of, like, if you had a recent failure and you say like, this is how not to sell or SDR, whatever it is, like based on this thing I did wrong, but here's how like my manager or whoever gave me a tip. That can all be super like practical stuff, I think, that can add value to people on the other end without feeling like you got to be the protagonist or like.
Yeah, the word that pops up for me is like context and like in substance, right? So like if we think about like I think about this even in coaching, right, or training some of my folks, it's like if someone's like, hey, listen, like what should I say to so and so? It's not enough just to give somebody that's like, hey, like here we go. Like, good luck, right? Because then they're like, wait, what is I know for myself, I'm like, what is this? Why am I doing it? How did you come to this conclusion to begin with? I mean, I do this with my manager all day long, right? I'm like, Willie, I hear what you're saying. And also like, you're going to have to walk me through this so that not only am I just like taking your word for it and running it and not really understanding like how this resonates with me, how this connects with me, but even I want to be able to understand, like, how can I improve upon this? So like, how did this come to be to begin with? Like, what is that context? What is that substance? And if I have an understanding of that, then I feel like, I get permission to then iterate on it even more. So, I mean, if there's like a tip here, even in saying this, it's like, if you're listening, it's like, hey, if someone's like, hey, go do this, like ask questions.
Totally. And I think personally, like if you're young, like, whew, oftentimes people come to a conversation, like whether it's seeking mentors or whatever, and it's like, well, what value do I have to add in the conversation? It's like, so heart to God, this is the feeling, want to know the impact that you have when you talk to someone who's more seasoned in their career. The value you add to them is you help them feel immortal. And let me explain that for a second. But this is like the impact I'm going to stand on that I've like built literally all my relationships on is like, if you do this right, you help someone who is seasoned feel immortal in that conversation. What I mean by that, you've got to be the most tenaciously coachable person they've ever come across. Like, and by that, I mean, like even getting my job at Klue, right? When I was making my pitch to my, my sales director who eventually hired me, the job rec like asked for 5+ years of SaaS sales experience, like enterprise SaaS sales experience, whatever. It's like, I didn't have that. Like, that's just not, I had full cycle AE experience. Like I closed deals, don't get me wrong, but not in SaaS and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
I mean, I wasn't going to be able to make my USP, like, I've worked at Salesforce for 10 years. Like that's not something I had in my, as an option in my pocket.
Yeah.
So I had other things to do. I had to like get creative and show that I was tenacious and coachable. And one of the things I consistently came back to in the process is I'm just going to be the most coachable person here. And that's probably going to mean more than someone coming, they know everything and not gelling, understanding that they've actually got a lot to pick up on. I'm like, I'm a clean slate, bro. Like, come on. And one of the things that I did to demonstrate the tenacity and coachability was I had a bunch of people send video testimonials to my sales director and CEO saying, if you don't hire this guy, I will. And also like from people in their ICP, but also they articulated some of that like nuance of like the coachability pieces. Like, yeah, this guy came prepared. Like he asked really specific nuanced questions that show he did his prep. He came back and circled back with me and told me about what he did with the prep or with the time that I gave him. Like, and that creates champions. And in that moment, when someone's pouring into you like that, if you're young, they feel like they're imparting their wisdom, whatever it is that they've built over time, to someone that's actually going to do something with it. They're passing on this legacy that everyone wants to build.
You're so right. No, honest. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
I'm landing the plane on the immortality point because I know it's a high stakes claim. But like when we talk about legacy, like all we're really saying is we want to feel like we're going to continue on forever. I think it's a deep longing of the human spirit to live on forever. People will tell you that that's why people procreate. People will tell you that's why like all sorts of things happen. Like we just don't want to die. Legacy plays are because people want to feel like they gonna live forever. And the deepest legacy play you can ever give to someone from a career like mentorship perspective is letting them know I've taken that which you have worked so hard to learn. You've passed it on to me and I'm doing something with it and I'm grateful to you for it. And I'm gonna let you know that the time invested in me wasn't spent, it was invested. I'm gonna go somewhere with it and I'm thankful. That feeling makes someone feel like they've passed on their legacy. They get that feeling of immortality, like they gonna live forever. I promise you, you have built a champion for life.
What the experience that I was having when you were talking was just thinking about my own personal experience of being someone, like I started off as an SDR almost 6 years ago, like managing SDRs now, being at a company like Gong too. Like I think in the past employers that I was at where I was managing a team, how to put this? Let me back it up. When I was an SDR, I was really good at my job. Like I crushed it, right? And there were a lot, but I invested so much time and energy into becoming masterful at the craft of being an SDR. And like this is like the same energy that I'm now dedicating into being a manager. That I've been dedicating as a manager. And one of the things that there's this moment that I had a few weeks ago, because I was like basically recognized, I was like, oh wow, I can take a much more active role in the day-to-day of the SDR. So not so much like, oh, hey, I'm going to do your job for you, but like, hey, like, let's build out these prospecting lists that I would have built out if I was an SDR. Like, let's create some messaging and some sequencing that I would have built out. And it's like seeing people run with that and succeed with that. It's like for people just like, I think one, to demonstrate, to experience someone demonstrating trust in something I believe in truly, and that helped me out so much. Like that in and of itself is so fulfilling. And so, and it makes it so, you touch on this, it makes it so easy to continue to pour into that person. Because it's like, hey, like, because there could be, of course, the legacy, like maybe that's what it is. But I'm like, I think even just being able to see someone succeed and to be a steward of that, to be involved in that, it's like, wow, like it wasn't just for me. You know, like it's not just something that lasted just when I was an SDR. So yeah, it's like, I think it's not just like a legacy of me, but the legacy of like, hey, like this was the effort like this was the dedication, this was the focus, was to become masterful. And so to be able to be a part of a situation or a group where like that legacy continues, is like, it's so fulfilling. So I think what you're saying, I mean, I feel it very strongly that it's magical, honestly.
And you're an extremely like giving and kind person, Gab. And I think a lot of people like just they get a lot of joy out of helping people. I think that's fundamentally true. But I'm like, I think that, I guess, that analysis I gave a second ago about mentorship or legacy or whatever, that feeling of immortality, does not at all bank on someone necessarily being a good person. Like, you know what I mean? Which like on everyone's worst days, right? We like, happens. And so I think that when people have done the like soul work to like reverse engineer like what really matters in life, oh, like I want to pass on what I know, like that's way more fulfilling than a lot of other things. Like that person already gets it. Like they've already done
no.
But
I mean, I feel you.
But I think like whether or not someone's done that homework, that legwork, like you can help bring that value to them, and that's what you are bringing to them, assuming that you're coming in with the right heart and willingness to be coachable and apply things. So
I love it. Everyone's like giving you props for being coachable, tenaciously coachable. I like that one. I remember I ran a search. I was looking for SDRs. Like I was scouting on LinkedIn, and I just typed in like sales plus tenacious. It's like my first SDR hire was like someone who just had tenacious in there. Perfect. I would be curious. I wonder, there's this question here. What's your approach to finding your tribe and balancing the difference between keeping out negative energy, but also trying to create your own version of a network gap? Not sure if I understand this one fully.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as far as, creating, so I just Googled the network gap because I'm here to learn too. Again, some individuals have over others as a result of who they know. Okay, so like some people like just have social capital of like knowing people and get access to things and opportunities as a result of that. And if I understand like how that plays off of the negative energy infecting your tribe bit, like, sorry if I'm misunderstanding your question, but like, how do you go about like having some like fence around like keeping people that you don't want necessarily in your tribe out of your tribe, but at the same time, not like creating these like massive disparities where you wouldn't necessarily be willing to let other people, have some of the opportunities that you've maybe gotten through networking. Hopefully I'm understanding your question correctly. I think there is something about like the healthiness of the human heart when like community is done with people that have gone before you, with people that are beside you, and people that are behind you, right? I used to work in my church. Like this is something that, I would try to really emphasize with people that I was like ministering to or like working with, is that if you don't spend time with people in front of you, you're not gonna like people before you. You're gonna hit a ceiling. And we kind of talked about this a decent bit. Like you need to learn from people that have gone ahead of you. So spend time with people before you. You spend time with people beside you, because if you don't have that, you're gonna feel lonely, frankly. And that's people more at the pure level. People that you can run with, that sort of thing. And people behind you, there's always going to be someone behind you. There's always going to be someone who is, hoping to grow in something that, you've, gotten a step ahead on or a couple steps ahead on or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are now the guru that's got to be like standing on a soapbox and teaching, but it might just be like connecting them to the sorts of things that you found helpful. So I guess, how do I think of, guarding my time and negative energy or whatever, like, people who I wish I had time to spend time with everybody. Like I really, really wish I did. I don't necessarily. And so we're probably going to start to filter some time around like, are we at least trying to go in the same direction? Right.
Yeah.
And then it's not necessarily about like, have you done as much as I have, or what, like, are you, on the negative energy bit? Like if you're hoping to go in the same direction that I have and you actually want to go with me, like, I think then the conversation becomes like, how do we help do accountability and community well, maybe to like kind of check some of those, negative, negative energy. Maybe someone's being selfish. Maybe someone's not looking out for people. Maybe someone's, saying sorts of things they shouldn't say. And like, I hope whoever, whether they're before, beside, or behind you, if they're hoping to go in the same direction with you, there's some reasons to be walking alongside each other and whatever. And someone says something that's off or does something that's off, you can have a candid conversation about it. Right. I'm a big fan of books like Boundaries. It's a great book if you're trying to learn about those sorts of pieces. Far more gets touched on there than I could maybe touch on in the scope of this conversation. But like, just for me, like, you gotta have some challenging conversations with people at times, set decent boundaries, hopefully, and kind of go in the same direction. You got to be intentional about trying to find people at all three stages of the game. And if you're doing that, I don't think you have to worry so much about the network gap side of things. You can only help and love and spend time with so many people. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I want to say I heard this from Kevin Dorsey, but one of the things, and this is something I've also been aware of in my own experience, is that the people who, like, as we move along in our journeys, right, whether that's in our career and our personal lives, is that group might not be the same, might not look the same, right? Like my best friends in elementary school, like I don't talk to any of them, right? Not because they're bad people, but it's like, we grew in different ways. Like one of my best friends from college, we were best friends in college, haven't heard from them in forever, right? And it's more so just like, I think that's more so a reflection of, hey, like there might be a direction that we move in, but who knows what happens? Maybe one of us decides to make a different choice in our lives, right? Like, hey, listen, actually, this isn't fulfilling for me anymore. I'm going to pivot. And so now I'm going to go this way. So there are times where it's like, all right, our tribes will change. Like it'll evolve, it'll morph, things like that. And so I don't know. There's one thing my therapist always says. He's like, whatever's yours will always be yours. There's no such thing as separation. So yeah, I think we end up finding our places and our people over time. All right, wonderful. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions. Let's see. Anything else? How about this? Is there anything you want to promote? Anything people should know about?
I would say right now, keep your eyes peeled for a very interesting conversation that's going to really start breaking out in January around what it means to include Black people in tech, and how do we help build more community for, build more sense of belonging for, better equipping for Black folk in tech sales. I'd just say keep your eyes peeled more than like something specific to promote just yet. But
all right, cool. I didn't want to say anything specifically because I'm like, I don't know if it's ready, but you see me like dancing over here. I'm like, yes.
We got some stuff cooking. I would say that there is a quiet Black tech sales I'd say movement, I would say that's about to hit surface. So if that's something that you're at all interested in, keep your eye out.
I love it. All right, I'm excited. I'm not gonna ask any more questions about that one. We'll have you on again. We'll talk more about it then. But all right, cool. So we're gonna come up to the end of the conversation. But for the folks who are tuning in, one thing that I will encourage you to do is to share what you learned today. If there's any one thing that you might have taken away from today's conversation, to share that on LinkedIn, hashtag SDR Hotline. And in doing this, you'll be entered into a little raffle, an opportunity to win a sales hacker magic mug. I didn't know it was magic. That's so exciting. So yeah, I just knew it was a mug, but like come to find out it's a magic mug as well.
Wild. There's another way. Just one last question. It seemed that popped in here at the buzzing.
Oh yeah. Like let's. Here we go.
What advice can you give a new SDR to be successful in my role? I would say, first off, congratulations. That's awesome. Great that you're in a new role. And I would say like there's a bunch of really great resources that you can go to find out what best practices are. I mean, reinventing the wheel, in my opinion, is a really tiring process, and do it if it's needed, but start from best practices, right? So your manager's probably got some great ones. If You haven't checked into the sales hacker community. There's a ton of great content, floating around about that. Once you've and follow some great voices. I love stuff that Morgan Ingram puts out. I love stuff that Keenan puts out. Not always like SDR, level stuff, but definitely some applications. So there's tons of great people to check out and kind of keep an eye on. But obviously Gab, as an SDR leader, she's always putting out stuff that's just like super, super helpful, like little video drops, things like that. So I would keep your eye on her, and then bust your tail. Like if you don't end up, loving this gig, like that's okay. If at the end of the day, you're like, honestly, this wasn't for me after trying your hand at it, that's okay. But do not let it be because you did not leave it all on the court. Like, do not let it be because you put it like in a 50% gear, right? If you busted your tail and you decide the same for me, cool. If you busted your tail and it doesn't work out, cool. But if you did not bust your tail, like that's not your boss. That's nothing. That's the character thing. Like we come correct with everything you got. Follow best practices. Don't be afraid to put your spin on things as you're finding out that some of those best practices might not be the thing that works in your context. So get it. If you don't have a manager that can help you out with that, find some mentors who can, and just leave it all on the court.
Yeah, I did not come up with this information. I posted it on LinkedIn. I came across it while reading, and it was talking about like what makes a top rep. And so let's say it's not just about becoming a new SDR. I'm going to say this is like, if you're trying to be a top rep, like you're going to need there's 3 critical things that you have to have, which is going to be the quantity. You got, this is what Jacob is sharing, is you have to put in the work. Like if you're expecting that on day 1, you're going to put in 50% effort and get 100% back. If you get it, you're an alien, and there are few and far between. There are some people who do that, they get there, but it's few and far between. You have to be invested in quality work. So like as you're going, recognize that in your first month and your 6th month should look wildly different. And that's going to be a reflection of the ways in which you have improved. So the quality of your work, and those are very measurable things as well. And the third piece is really going to be about building consistency. Consistency in your systems, consistency in your processes. I think back to when I was an SDR. So something like, for example, we went from having like inside sales, which is called something else now, I forget. But like we had inside sales, we had Gmail, and that was really it. And then we were implementing HubSpot, and HubSpot had HubSpot sales. And I was like, oh, wow, like what? And this is the first version of like a cadence or a sequence. And I was like, okay, I can create a campaign and run people through it and create multiple ones and have personalization in each one of these campaigns. So essentially I'm only doing 20 manual tasks a day, but there's 75, 80 automatic tasks that are coming out, and nobody else on my team was doing that. And so what ends up happening is I'm getting 150, 200% of my quota, while the next person up is getting 83% of their quota. So like if you can start to identify ways to build a process that is consistent and that can scale with you and allow you to innovate and to experiment as well, like that's where you can start seeing like leaps and bounds from just 80%, 100% to now like 120, 150, 175, 200%. So like and then I think like what grounds all of that is your mentality, is your mindset. If you don't think you can, it's not going to happen. Yeah. It's not going to happen. But like, so like, it's like, you can do the activities, you can kind of get better, right? You can have the systems and the processes, but if you don't have a mindset of, I'm going to get this shit done no matter what, I'm swearing a lot, I don't care, I feel very strongly about this. If you don't have the mindset that you are capable and that you are deserving and that you are worthy and that you can do this and you can do it magnificently, right? Like nothing, that's not going to change much. So I think like a lot of the recommendations that I give to people, especially as they're starting off as a new SDR, is like, what is going to be that Northern Star for you? What is going to be that thing that when you're not feeling up to it, like that's the thing that's going to light a fire underneath you and say, listen, there's a purpose, there's a drive, there's some motivation. For me, it was like, I had a chip on my shoulder. I had just left my ex-husband and I was like, I'm going to prove to everybody. I went Michael Jordan mode. I was like, I'm going to prove to everybody that I am so capable. Like everybody's going to feel so stupid for ever doubting me. That's transformed, right? It's not about other people. It's more like, hey, like, how good can I tolerate my life being? How good could I tolerate myself being at my job? How good could I tolerate, like, how much of an impact, a positive impact I can make in the places that I'm in right now. But those are really going to, like, that drive, that mentality, like, that's the thing that you have to cultivate to be, like, not just any SDR, but to be a top rep.
Totally
Brand done.
Yeah, 100%. Like, mic drop on that. I mean, like, and if you take, like, you know, a framework or whatever of thoughts, like, I've always been told, like, since I was early on in my sales days, like, if you don't have 4 things, like, you're not going to make it. If you don't have, first and foremost, like, a vision for why you're doing the thing that you're doing, I promise you, your SDR gig is one of the most worthwhile, but also the most difficult job you'll ever do. Right? You're going to learn some incredible things, but it's a job that is tough to do. And so if you don't have a vision for why you're doing that thing, when you're getting into your, like, you know, 10th call of the day, you know, when someone hangs up on you, when you got to go craft another email, like, it's just like, if you don't have a why behind it, like, so you gotta have a vision for it. You gotta have a why. And my bet is it's probably gonna have to be bigger than money. Like, I'm like, money's cool. Like, I'm not saying don't get money, like, get paid. I'm just saying it's probably
get paid, definitely.
Probably have to be more than that. Because I know a lot of sad people with a lot of money. So why? You got to make sure that you got the coachability, because, like, honestly, if you are twice as smart as me, but I'm twice as coachable as you, I will beat you. Like, it doesn't matter because other people, I'm okay with other people being smarter than me. But if I can learn from other smarter people, the thing that applies best to my situation, or the thing that made them a top rep or whatever, like, that's probably better than the person who has to reinvent the wheel the whole way through. So, like, just be extremely tenacious, coachable. I hope that's come through in this conversation, not just with, like, and don't just limit yourself to the resources you've got at your organization. For the rest of your life, if your main coach and only coaching option has to be the person above you, it might not happen. Like, I've got a great manager. My manager, Kala, is the GOAT. Like, if he wasn't, I would not be any less good at my job. I would go and find someone else that could help. Yep. So be coachable and be tenacious about finding people who have done what you hope to do and pursuing them and figuring out how they can help you figure out the process for doing it in your context. So coachability, work habit. This is just like, leave it on the court. Like, do not let it be that you didn't. Do not let this be, like, a lack of work habit be the reason that this didn't work out. And then fourth is just accountability. And I think it's probably the most underrated requirement of being excellent in sales. Like, you got to do what you say you're going to do.
I could do an entire episode. I feel so strongly about sales development and being a top rep. Like, I'm just like, hey, listen, like, I don't want just SDRs. Like, I want like leaders, you know, 100%. Like,
why would you, like, if you're going to do, like, being an SDR, like, why would you not dunk on this thing? Like, this is the door. This is the entry. How you treat this gig is how you will treat the rest of your career. Yeah. And if you come up with excuses to not leave it on the court here, you will come up with excuses to not leave it on the court later. If you come up with excuses to not be coachable here or not follow through here or whatever, it will show up again. Ooh. So, like, get this work, yo. Get this work. If this is your new role, like, make your numero uno priority outside of, you know, the whatever primary, most important set of relationships you got to keep. Like, number one priority outside of that is, like, you got to dunk on this. So that's what I would say.
Dunk.
Come on.
Thank you. All right. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, that's it. That's it from my end. Anything else? If not, no worries. So again, again, share your main takeaways, hashtag SDR Hotline. And all I'm saying is, I don't even know about this magic mug, so it must be something super duper special. And I say I'm Brooklyn, I want one or two. Let me know.
Shout out Sales Hacker. This has been awesome. Gab, this is the most fun, like, for real. This is everything I would have hoped it would have been. So thanks for being an awesome host.
Thank you. No, honestly, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for, honestly, like virtual hug. Thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for being here today. So anyways, have a great rest of the Friday. This is the last SDR Hotline of 2022. So like, we'll be seeing you next year. Got a whole host of people. We're going to be kicking it off with Justin Michael. If you don't know who he is, go look for the man with the robot face.
Justin Michael and Nikki Ivy, get out of here. Like,
so no, honestly, we got nothing but rock star guest. Okay, get out of here. I gotta keep going. So yeah, all right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much.